You're watching the chapter number 1 of the Blender modeling course, where we'll be modeling a pocket watch, and while doing this, our main target will be to focus on understand about the different modeling tools in Blender and their correct applications. Apart from this, we'll also be creating some materials for our 3D model which we'll be applying later on in this chapter, and in the end, we'll finally render the image of the 3D model of this pocket watch. So to begin with, I've opened a new Blender file with the default layout, and whenever I press any key on the keyboard, its name will get displayed on this bottom left side automatically in every chapter. Now the first step that we have to do for modeling the pocket watch is to have a reference image in order to get an idea of what exactly we'll be making. So for this purpose, I tried searching for some images on Google of a simple pocket watch with gears, and all these results came up in the Google image section. And yes, since we are choosing only a reference image, we won't be exactly copying it for our 3D model, but we'll only take an idea of exactly what we need to model in our Blender project. And this is suggested not only for this pocket watch model, but also for any object that you wish to model in your Blender file, and it totally depends upon you that which particular image you wish to choose for reference. And for now, I'm planning to choose this particular image as the reference image for the pocket watch. I will drop the link of this image in the description of this video so that you can download it from there. So once you have saved this image in your PC, we'll return back to our Blender file, and now we need to import the image that we downloaded in this Blender file. And to do this, we'll first open an image editor over here. And to do this, simply take your pointer to any of the corners of any editor, and when your cursor changes to this symbol, you need to left click and drag your cursor like this. This will add the space for a new editor. Now to change the area of any of these editor windows, simply keep your cursor on the space between the two editors, and when the cursor changes to this double-headed arrow, you need to left click and drag your cursor like this. In this way, the area of that editor will get changed. Now to open the image editor, I'll click on this icon, and from here, select the image editor. This image editor will be used to import the image that we downloaded as the reference image of the pocket watch. Now to import that image, we need to click on the open button in the image editor, which we currently can't see because of lesser area. And to solve this problem, I simply need to drag the middle mouse button in this direction, and by doing this, we'll be able to see all these options present on the other side also. Now to import the reference image, click on this open button, and after this, it will ask you to choose the folder where you have saved that particular reference image. Now select that image and click on the open image button, and by doing this, the reference image will get added in the image editor. Now to zoom in, we'll simply use the scroll wheel, and with this, we have learned how to add a reference image in our Blender file. Now let's start with the process of modeling, and the first thing that we need to do is to add the basic object which resembles the shape of the 3D model that we wish to create. And for this purpose, let's first open the add menu by pressing Shift plus A, then go to mesh, and over here we have several objects to choose from. To create a pocket watch, the first object, which is the plane, will not be a good idea. Similarly, the cube will also not be a good idea to start with the modeling. However, we can use a circle because the shape of circle resembles with that of a pocket watch. Then we have the UV sphere and the icosphere, and obviously both of these are also not that good in order to model the pocket watch. Then we have the cylinder, which can be a slightly better alternative than the circle that we were previously thinking. Then over here we have the cone, the torus object, the grid, and the monkey object, and none of these can be useful to start with the modeling of this pocket watch. As a result, after analyzing all the mesh objects, I think that we should choose to add the cylinder object. So first of all, let's delete this default cube by pressing X and select delete. Now to add the cylinder, press Shift plus A, then go to mesh and select the cylinder. Now our main target throughout the modeling process is basically to attain a shape which looks similar to the one that we want to create. So in this particular case also, we first have to reduce the length of the cylinder, and to do this, we have to enter the edit mode of the cylinder. So press the tab key to enter the edit mode, and as the name suggests, this edit mode is the place where you can edit the vertices, the edges, and the faces of your mesh object. By default, for any object, whenever we enter the edit mode for the first time, all of the vertices will be selected, and as a result, they're highlighted with the orange color. If you want to deselect them, you can simply left click anywhere around the 3D viewport, and then all of them will get deselected. Now suppose I wish to select only a particular vertex of the cylinder model, then simply left click on that vertex and it will get selected. Now moving ahead, in order to scale down the cylinder object, we first need to select all of these vertices, and to do this, the shortcut is to press A on the keyboard. Now to reduce its height, we basically need to change the scaling of this object, and the shortcut to scale is to press S, and if I move my cursor, then you will notice that the scaling of this object will begin to change. However, by default, the scaling will be applied to all the three axes, meaning the x-axis represented by this red line, the y-axis represented by the green line, and the z-axis, which by default is hidden in Blender, but to view it, you can click on this icon, and in the viewport overlays, go to this axis option and turn on the z-axis. With this blue colored line will appear, which is representing the z-axis. Now in this case, we need to reduce the scaling of the cylinder object only in the z-axis, and to do this, press S, and after that, press the Z key in order to restrict the scaling of this object only in the Z axis. So let's scale it down like this, and once you have finalized, simply click the left mouse button. Now moving ahead, suppose we want this outer part of the cylinder to have more of a curved shape, and to achieve such a result, we should be having an entire loop of vertices in between these two loops of vertices. And to do this thing, we basically need to add a loop cut in this area, and the shortcut to add a loop cut is to press Ctrl plus R and then keep your cursor around that region where you want to add this particular loop cut. Then once you have finalized this, simply left click, and if I try to move my cursor, then you will notice that this loop of vertices or the edge loop that we created is moving like this. Now here you will have two options. If you want to finalize a particular location of your own choice for this edge loop, then you need to left click. However, if you want the default position to be applied for this edge loop, then simply click the right mouse button. This will automatically place the edge loop in the center or the default position. Now to make this area around the sides more curved and rounded, we need to scale up this edge loop. So with all the vertices selected in this particular edge loop, press S to scale it up and left click to finalize. By doing this, the region around the sides is now having a slight curved or a rounded look. Similarly, if you want to add some more roundness to the side areas, then you can add some more loop cuts in these regions. So to do this, press Ctrl plus R, and with the cursor in this upper region of the sides, we'll be adding a loop cut over here. But before finalizing, if I begin to scroll the middle mouse button, then you will notice that the number of these loop cuts will begin to increase. Similarly, if I scroll down, then the number of loop cuts will reduce. So in this way, you can set the number of loop cuts to be added in a particular region. In order to finalize, press the left mouse button, and to cancel the movement, we'll click the right mouse button. Now to give it a curved appearance, let's scale it down by pressing S and left click to finalize. To make its shape look better, we'll be individually selecting this lower edge loop and we'll slightly scale it up. And to do this, let's first deselect everything, and to select this edge loop, the shortcut is to hold down the Alt key and left click on any of the edge of that particular edge loop. Now press S to scale it up and left click to finalize. Similarly, with the Alt key holded, if I left click on this edge, then this particular edge loop will get selected. Now moving ahead, we'll also be scaling down this top part of the cylinder, and to do this, we'll be selecting this top edge loop by holding the Alt button and left clicking here, then press S to scale it down and left click to finalize. Similarly, let's add a loop cut on this lower part also in order to give it a slightly curved appearance. So with my cursor over here, I'll press Ctrl plus R to add a loop cut, then left click to finalize and right click to cancel the movement. Now press S to scale it up, and after adjusting, left click to finalize. Now let's return back to the object mode, so press the tab key, and now this is how the basic structure of the pocket watch is looking right now. Now by default, all the faces of the object are shaded flat. However, if you want to give them some smoothness, then simply right click in the object mode and select Shade Auto Smooth. With this, all the faces of our mesh object will now be shaded smooth. Now moving ahead, let's also make some changes in the edit mode of this object in order to make this top face slightly more distinguishable from the remaining model. So press tab to go into the edit mode, and we need to select this particular edge loop on the second number. So with the Alt key holded, I left click on this edge, and once this is selected, I will press S to scale it down like this. Similarly, I'll select this edge loop now, which is on the third number, and will slightly scale it down like this in order to give this pocket watch a slightly more realistic look. Now let's return back to the object mode by pressing the tab key, and with this, the basic structure of the pocket watch is completely ready. Now it is also recommended to turn on the cavity option by clicking on this drop down arrow and turning on the cavity from here, and by doing this, we'll be able to see the edges of a 3D model in a much better way. Now moving ahead, the next thing that we're gonna do is to apply a modifier on this object, which is known as the bevel modifier, and it will give a much more natural and a realistic look to this model. But before that, let's first understand about what exactly is meant by the term bevel, and for this, I will be adding a cube in the scene. So press Shift plus A, go to Mesh and select Cube. Now to move this cube in the Y axis, press G and Y and place it over here. Now press Tab to go to the edit mode, and with all the vertices selected, if I want to apply the bevel tool, then I have to use the shortcut, which is to press Ctrl plus B, and if I move my cursor, then you will notice that the bevel effect is being applied on the selected vertices. The use of this tool is that it kind of creates a curved or a rounding effect around the edges of the selected object. Also, if I scroll up the middle mouse button, then you will notice that the number of edges for the bevel effect will begin to increase. Now if I left click to finalize and return back to the object mode, then you will see that this cube with the bevel effect is having a rounded appearance, giving it a natural look. Now just like the bevel tool, we also have a modifier which makes our work easier, since we can directly use it in this properties editor without having to go to the edit mode. So to understand about the bevel modifier, I'll first delete this cube by pressing X. Now select this object with which we are creating the pocket watch by left clicking on it, and now to add the bevel modifier, go to the properties editor and click on this tool icon, which is for the modifier properties. Now click on add modifier, then in the generate, here we have the bevel modifier on the second number. So we'll select this, and suddenly you will notice that a slight bevel effect can be seen on the selected object. And now in the bevel modifier, we have two important options. The first is the amount, which obviously controls controls the amount of bevel effect, and the second is the segments, which controls the number of edges to be created while adding the bevel effect. So for the amount, I'll reduce it to somewhere close to 0.05 or 0.07, and in the segments, I will keep this to the default value of 1. Now the next thing that we're gonna do is to understand about the subdivision surface modifier. This particular modifier will help to subdivide the number of vertices in any object, and because of that, the number of vertices in the object will increase. And always remember that higher the number of vertices, more realistic will be the object's appearance. To understand this concept in more detail, we'll take the example of the monkey object. So press Shift plus A, then go to Mesh, and from here, select the monkey object. Let's move it in the x-axis by pressing G and X and place it over here. Now by default, the selected monkey object is having a particular number of vertices, which you can see by going to the edit mode. However, if I right click, then this vertex menu will appear, where the first option that you have is subdivide, and with all of these vertices selected, if I click on the subdivide option, then every single vertex will get subdivided, and as a result, the number of these vertices will increase. And the same effect can also be achieved by using a modifier which is known as the subdivision surface modifier. So if I undo this by using the shortcut Ctrl plus Z and return back to the object mode, then in the modify properties, I'll go to the add modifier, and in the generate, select the subdivision surface modifier. And with this, you will notice that the selected object will now have a highly realistic look, and all this is just because of adding the subdivision surface modifier. Then here we have the option to set the levels viewport, which is basically the number of subdivisions to be performed on the vertices. So in the levels viewport, if I increase this value, then you will notice that because of increase in the number of subdivisions, the amount of realism that this monkey object is having has also increased. Now in a very similar way, we'll also be applying the subdivision surface modifier to this pocket watch that we created. But before that, let's first delete this monkey object by pressing X. Now I'll select this pocket watch, and in the modify properties, go to add modifier, then in the generate category, select the subdivision surface modifier. And with this, the subdivision surface modifier is now added to the selected object, giving it a slightly more realistic look. If you want, you can increase the levels viewport to a value of 2, but in this case, I'll be going for a value of 1 right now. Now moving ahead, let's further work on creating the details of this pocket watch. So press tab to go to the edit mode, and now we have to select this top face and bring it down in order to create the empty or the hollow space. And in order to select the top face, we first need to enter the face mode, and the shortcut to enter the face mode is to press 3, and by doing this, we'll now be able to select any face of the selected object. So basically, for the vertex selection mode, the shortcut is to press 1, then to select the edges, the shortcut is to press 2, and the third mode is to select the faces of the object, which can be enabled by pressing 3. Now I'll select this top face by left clicking on it, and first of all, let's create a small boundary between this outer region and the face that will move down. And to do this thing, we have to use a tool which is known as the inset tool. To use it, press I, and now if I try to move my cursor, then you will notice that the inset faces effect is now being applied to the selected face. So once you have finalized the area of this face which has been created because of inset, you simply need to left click. So in simple words, the inset faces command causes new faces to be created inside or outside a selected geometry. And now to bring this face downwards to create the hollow space, we'll be using a tool which is known as the extrude tool. This particular tool is used to create a duplicate of the selected geometry which will remain connected to the original geometry, and then it can be used to be moved up and down, and also to apply the rotation or the scaling. To understand this thing in more detail, let's return back to the object mode. Now press Shift plus A, then in the mesh, we'll be selecting the cube object. Let's move it in the x-axis and place it over here. Now press tab to go to the edit mode, and with this top face selected, we'll be using and understanding the extrude tool. So to access the extrude tool, simply press the E key, and if I try to move my cursor, then you will notice that a new face has been created which is connected by these edges to the original face or the edge loop of this cube. And now with this extruded face selected, if I try to move it by pressing G, then you will notice that we can freely move it in any direction. Now let's do the same thing with this object also. So return back to the object mode. Let's also delete this cube object that we created by pressing X. Now select the pocket watch, press tab to enter the edit mode, and with this face selected, press E to extrude it, and then if I move my cursor, it will ask us to choose a particular location. However, if I right click, then it will add the extruded face at the same position where we had the original face. Now with this extruded face selected, if I press G to move it and then press Z and move this face down, then you will notice that we are able to move this extruded face in the downward direction. After finalizing, simply click the left mouse button, and with this we have learned how to create an extrusion face and also move it in a particular direction. Now let's return back to the object mode, and in the bevel modifier, I'll increase the number of segments to a value of 2. Now the next thing that we'll do is to create this inside region, which is also called the dial of the watch. And for this, we first need to go to the top view in order to see everything properly. So the shortcut to enable the top view is to press 7 on the numpad, and now to create the dial, we'll be using a circle object. So press Shift plus A, then go to mesh and select the circle. Now to view it, we'll be enabling the X-ray mode, and the shortcut to enable the X-ray mode is to press Alt plus Z, and now you can see here that we have the circle added which is highlighted with the orange color. Also, if you have not made any changes after adding the circle, then you will be able to see this menu which is known as the add circle. And if I open this, then various options will be available like the number of vertices, the radius of the circle, the fill type, the location, rotation, and the thing that we'll be changing is the number of vertices. So instead of 32, I'll change the number of vertices to 64 in order to give it a slightly more rounded appearance. Now to change its size according to the size of a dial, let's tab into the edit mode, press A to select everything, and we'll scale it down by pressing S. Now left click to finalize, and with this we have the size of this circle similar to that of the watch dial. However, if I press G to move it, then you will notice that it is a simple circle with no faces connecting the vertices of the circle. So to fill a face with all the vertices of the circle, first I'll right click to cancel the movement, press A to select all, and to fill the faces, the shortcut is to press F. With this, all the faces will together get connected in order to fill this face. Now moving ahead, let's turn off the X-ray mode in order to see the objects properly. So press Alt plus Z, and with this circle selected, let's move it up in the Z axis, and we'll place the circle somewhere over here. Now the next thing that we'll do is to make sure that there's no empty space between the pocket watch and the circle face. So for this purpose, you simply need to go to the top view by pressing 7 on the numpad and turn on the X-ray mode by pressing Alt plus Z. And now if I zoom in, then here we can see that the outlining of the circle is passing beyond this inner boundary of the pocket watch, and this will ensure that the scaling of the circle is perfectly correct for this pocket watch. Now if we look closely at this image, we'll notice that for these gears that are added in the watch, we have some cutouts, and just because of these cutouts, we are able to see them. So in order to create similar cutouts in the circular plate that we have created in our scene, we'll be using a tool which is known as the Boolean modifier. So to understand this, let's return back to the object mode, and now first of all, we'll be focusing only on this circular plate, and so let's hide this body of the pocket watch that we previously created. So with this body selected, press H to hide, and after this, we'll be understanding about the Boolean modifier, and we'll use it to create some cutouts on this circular plate. So for this, we'll first add a cylinder in our scene. So press Shift plus A, then go to Mesh and select the cylinder. Press Tab to enter the edit mode. Press A to select all, and we'll scale it down like this. Now left click to finalize, and let's return back to the object mode. Now suppose I want that a cutout should be created on this circular plate depending upon the area of intersection of this circle and the cylinder. So with the circle selected, we have to go to the modify properties, then click on add modifier, and in the generate category, here we have the Boolean modifier. So I'll select this, and in the Boolean, we are having 3 options, but the one which we'll be using for our current purpose will be the difference operation. This operation will basically subtract the geometry or the mesh of a particular object from that object on which the Boolean modifier is used. To understand this thing in more detail, we'll switch to the wireframe mode. So click on this icon, and now with the circle selected, I will go to the modify properties, and in the object, we'll be selecting this cylinder.001 which we have just created. And by doing this, you will notice that there is a slight change in the geometry of the circle. And yes, in order to see this change, do ensure that you have turned on the X-ray mode. Now if I select the cylinder and try to move it, then you will notice that as the position of the cylinder is changing, the circular cutout that is created is also moving. And basically this is the use of the Boolean modifier. With the difference operation selected, it basically subtracts the geometry of the target object which you select here, which is the cylinder.001 in this case, from that object on which this modifier is applied. So now if I go back to the solid mode, then I'll click here and apply the modifier by clicking on the apply button. Then in the 3D viewport, I'll select the cylinder and press X to delete it, and with this we are having a cutout created according to the area of intersection of the cylinder and the circular object. However, if you want to change the size of this cutout, then select the circle, press tab to go to the edit mode, deselect everything, press 1 for the vertex selection mode, and now we need to select this entire vertex loop. So press Alt and left click. Now the first half is selected, and to select the other half also, we need to hold the Shift key and then simultaneously hold the Alt key. Now left click over here again, and with this we have the entire loop of vertices selected in the edit mode. Now to change their size, simply press S to scale it up or down, and left click to finalize. Similarly, if I press G to move it in a particular direction, then you will notice that we can easily change the position. To cancel the movement, click the right mouse button, and now we'll be repeating the same procedure to create some more cutouts. So let's come out of the edit mode, press Shift plus A, go to Mesh and select the cylinder, press Tab to go to the edit mode, and with all the vertices selected, press S to scale it down. Let's return back to the object mode, and let's also move it slightly up in the Z axis. Now to create the cutouts, we need to have a proper view of the circular plate. So let's go to the top view by pressing 7 on the numpad, and with the cylinder selected, I will press G to move it and place it at that particular location where we want to create the cutout. So I'll place it over here. Similarly, to create some more cutouts, press Shift plus D to create a duplicate. Let's place it over here, and similarly, if you want to change the scaling, then tap to go to the edit mode, and with all the vertices selected, press S to scale it up. Now return back to the object mode, and in a similar way, you can create as many duplicates as you want by simply pressing Shift plus D and moving the cylinder at your desired location. So I will place this cylinder over here, then go to the edit mode, and I'll slightly scale it up like this. Now back to the object mode, I will be selecting both of these cylinders and will place them somewhere over here. And yes, it totally depends upon you that on which particular locations you want to create the cutouts. Now to select both of these cylinders, I'll first select any one and then with the shift key hold it, left click to select the other one. Now press shift plus D to create the duplicates and we'll move them in the Y axis. Let's place them over here. Let's also move them in the X axis like this and left click to finalize. If you want, you can change their rotation or the scaling according to the size of the cutouts that you wish to have on the circular plate. Now once you have created all the cutouts, we can now work on applying the Boolean modifier. So for this, I'll select the circular plate, then go to the modify properties, click on add modifier and in the generate, select the Boolean modifier. Now instead of applying the Boolean modifier to each of these objects separately, we can create a single collection of all these cylindrical objects. So for this, let's first select all these cylinders by holding the shift button, and after this, to create a collection, the shortcut is to press M and select the new collection. We'll keep the name of this collection as collection number 2, then click on the create button, and after this, in the scene collection, you can see that we have a separate collection named as the collection number 2 where we have added all these cylinders that we need for the cutouts. Now select the circle again and in the Boolean modifier, change the operand type from object to collection, and in the collection, we'll be selecting the collection number 2. Now to see the cutouts, let's first apply the Boolean modifier from here, then select all these cylinders that we use for the cutouts by holding the shift button, and after that press X to delete them. And with this, we have now created some simple cutouts for a pocket watch. And now moving ahead, the next thing that we'll do is to give some thickness to this circular plate. So for this, let's first unhide the cylinder, and the shortcut to do this is to press Alt plus H, and with this we have the cylinder object, or basically the pocket watch body that we created back in our scene. To give some thickness to this circular plate, I'll select it, then press tab to go to the edit mode, press A to select everything, and we'll be applying the extrusion effect. So press E to extrude it downward in the Z axis and left click to finalize, and by doing this, we have created some visible thickness for this circular plate. Also, if you want to reduce the thickness, then with the extruded vertices selected, press G to move them in the Z axis and reduce the thickness like this. Also, to give it a more natural look, we'll be applying the bevel modifier. So let's come out of the edit mode, and with this circle selected, go to the modify properties, click on add modifier, and in the generate, select the bevel modifier. Then for the amount, we'll reduce it to something like 0.02 or 0.03. After this, we'll now work on creating these numbers for the pocket watch. And for this purpose, we'll be using an understanding about the text object. So to add a text object, press shift plus A, and over here, we have the option to add the text object. So I'll select this, and now here you can see that we have the text object created, and if you want to modify it, then press tab to go to the edit mode, and now if I type anything on the keyboard, then that particular text will get displayed on this text object. Similarly, if I press backspace, then the text will be removed. And yes, in order to see the text completely, let's return back to the object mode and press Alt plus Z to turn on the X-ray mode. Now to change the text, press tab to enter the edit mode, then press backspace to remove this text. Now in the reference image, the numbers on the watch are in numeric form. However, in most of the watches, we have the numbers written in the Roman numeral system. So in this case also, I will be going with the Roman numeral system, but if you wish, you may proceed with the normal numeral system just like this reference image. Now in the text object, I will enter XII in capitals in order to represent the number 12 in the Roman numeral system. After this, I'll get back to the object mode, and to place it properly on the clock, we'll go to the top view by pressing 7 on the numpad, press Alt plus Z to turn off the X-ray mode, and with the text selected, first we'll scale it down by pressing S. So we'll keep it to something like this, and we'll move it up in the Y axis. So let's place it over here. Let's also move it slightly in the X axis like this. Also, one more thing that you can see here is that this number on the clock is intersecting with these empty cutouts that we created. So to prevent this from happening, I'll select the circular plate, press R to rotate it, and left click to finalize. Now the reason why we can't see the text that we just created is that it is placed below this circular plate. However, if you want to view it in the object mode, then press Alt plus Z to turn on the X-ray mode, and now we are able to see the text that we added. So I'll select it, and to move it above the plate, let's go to the front view by pressing 1 on the numpad. Let's zoom in, and we'll move this up in the Z axis. So let's place it over here. Also, in order to give it some thickness, we have to go to the object data properties. So with the text selected, go to this properties editor, and over here you have this option which is called the object data properties. So if I click on this, it will display a list of all the options, or basically the settings that are available for the text that we created. For example, the resolution, the alignment, the font, and if I open the geometry, then from here we can control the amount amount of extrusion which is applied to the text. So to apply the extrusion, let's first turn off the X-ray mode by pressing Alt plus Z, and let's increase the value of extrusion from 0 meters to something around 0.02 or 0.03 meters, and now the text looks perfect. Similarly, if you want to apply the bevel effect, then you can go to the bevel category and increase the depth from here. But for now, I will keep this to 0 meters. Then I'll scroll down, and in the font option, we can change the font of this text. So to do this, click on this folder icon along the regular font, and this will display a list of all the fonts that are saved in your PC. So you can select any of these fonts by simply left clicking on it and then click on the open font. By doing this, the particular font that you selected will get applied to that particular text object. Moving ahead, we'll now be creating 3 more text objects for the remaining numbering. So let's go to the top view by pressing 7 on the numpad, and with this selected, press Shift plus D to create a duplicate, then right click to cancel the movement, and we'll move it down in the y-axis, and let's place it over here. Now to change the text, press tab to go to the edit mode, press backspace to remove, and here I'll be typing VI in order to represent 6 o'clock. Now return back to the object mode. Let's also rotate the circular plate slightly more like this. Now moving ahead, let's create 2 more duplicates. So I'll select this text, press Shift plus D to create a duplicate, then right click to cancel the movement. Now press G and Y to move it up in the y-axis, then press G and X, and we'll place it over here. Let's move it slightly more upwards. Now to change the text, press tab to enter the edit mode, and we'll change this to 3 o'clock. Now return back to the object mode. Let's create 1 more duplicate by pressing Shift plus D, then right click to cancel the movement, and we'll place it in the x-axis over here. Then to change the text, press tab to go to the edit mode, and for this one, I will be typing IX representing 9 o'clock. And after this, we have created the text objects for these 4 numbers. And now moving ahead, the next thing that we'll be doing is to create this top part of the pocket watch, or basically its crown. So for this, while being in the object mode, we'll be adding a cylinder object. So press Shift plus A, then go to mesh and select the cylinder, press tab to go to the edit mode, and with all the vertices selected, we'll scale it down like this. Then we'll rotate it in the x-axis by pressing R and X, and if I type 90 in the numpad and press enter, then this will rotate the cylinder object in the x-axis by 90 degrees. Now let's return back to the object mode, and to place it properly on the top of the pocket watch, we'll go to the top view by pressing 7 on the numpad, and with the cylinder selected, we'll move it up in the y-axis and place it over here. Now press tab to go to the edit mode, and let's also scale it up in the y-axis like this. Now to give it a curved shape in the middle, we need to have some more vertices or edge loops so that we can change their scaling and give this a curved or a rounded look. So for this, simply press Ctrl plus R to insert a loop cut, and to increase the number of loop cuts, we'll be using the scroll wheel. So let's keep the number of loop cuts to somewhere around 8 or 10, then left click to finalize and right click to cancel the movement. Now press A to select everything, and let's slightly scale up more in the y-axis like this. Then I'll go to the object mode and we'll move it up in the y-axis. Now to give it a curved appearance, we'll go to the edit mode, and we need to select only some particular loops of vertices or the edge loops somewhere around the middle region. So for this, let's first deselect everything, and to select this particular edge loop, I'll hold the Alt button and left click on this edge. However, if I try to scale it up, then you will notice that we are not getting the desired results, and this is because we are only scaling up a single edge loop and its influence is not being applied to the remaining ones. And for this particular purpose, we have a special tool in Blender which is known as the proportional editing tool. To enable it, press O, and now if I press S to scale it up, then you will notice that even though we have selected only a particular edge loop, still the entire cylinder is being influenced by the scaling up and down. And to control this area of influence, we need to use our scroll wheel. So if I begin to scroll up, then after some time, this circle will appear, which is also known as the circle of influence, and it basically defines the area where the effect of scaling will be applied within the selected object. And by default, the area of this circle is very high whenever you will use it for the very first time. So after turning it on and pressing S, do ensure that you scroll up the middle mouse button a lot of times in order to reduce its area. And now over here, you can clearly see that the cylinder that we created is now having a curved or a rounded appearance. Moving ahead, I will now select this edge loop by holding Alt, and will use it to create this part which is scaled up in the reference image. So for this, press E to extrude, then left click to finalize, and to scale it up, I'll first turn off the proportional editing tool by pressing O, then press S to scale it up, and left click to finalize. And so with this, we have created this top part of the pocket watch. But right now, we need to reduce its size. So press tab to enter the edit mode, press A to select everything, and press S to scale it down. After that, click the left mouse button to finalize, and to place it properly, let's return back to the object mode. Let's also go to the side view by pressing 3 on the numpad, and we'll move this in the y-axis. So we'll place it over here. Let's also move it slightly downwards like this. And finally, we have completed the basic structure of this top part, the body of the pocket watch, this circular disc with the cutouts, and even some simple text for the time in the watch. And now the next thing that we'll be doing is to create 2 more copies of this top part, and we'll place them on these 2 locations. So to do this, with this object selected, press Shift plus D to create a duplicate, then right click to cancel the movement. And now one way to place this object at a specific position is to move it by pressing G and rotating it to make the adjustment. However, a better way to do the same thing is to rotate it around the 3D cursor. So with the duplicate selected, we need to transform the pivot point around which the rotation will occur. So to do this, click on this icon which is for the transform pivot point, and from here select the 3D cursor. After this, if I try to rotate this duplicate by pressing R, then you will notice that it will take the 3D cursor as the reference for the rotation purpose. Now we'll place it over here, and to finalize the rotation, click the left mouse button, and similarly to create one more object for the opposite side, you can create a duplicate of it and rotate it. However, a better and a more accurate way to do the same thing is to use the mirror modifier. To access it, go to the modify properties by clicking on this icon, then click on add modifier, and in the generate, here you have the mirror modifier. Now this particular modifier will allow us to create a mirror object based on a reference object, which will be this top part of the pocket watch. It is saved with the name cylinder.001, and therefore with this selected, I'll go to the mirror object, and in this list I will select the cylinder.001. By doing this step, the mirror modifier will now take this cylinder.001 as the reference object, or basically the mirror object, and it will create the mirrored object of this cylinder.002 in such a way that it will be symmetrical to the original one with reference to the top part. Now the next thing that we'll be doing is to add some gears in these empty spaces, and to do this we don't need to model the gears ourselves because Blender has a special add-on or an extension which is available for free within the software, and it will allow us to directly add the gear objects. And to get that extension, go to this edit option on the top left corner and click on the preferences. After this, the Blender preferences window will appear. Now click on the get extensions, and in the search bar simply type extra mesh objects. After this, an extension will appear named as extra mesh objects. Click on the install button, and once it is installed, we'll close this window. Now to add the gears, press Shift+A, then go to mesh, and here you have a category which is known as the gears. So in this, we'll be selecting the gear, and this will add this gear in our scene, and also this menu will appear using which you can change the different properties of the gear which is added. So in the number of teeth, I'll enter a value of 16. Then in this dedendum, we'll enter a value of somewhere around 0.2 meters, or maybe let's keep it to 0.19 meters, and now it looks perfect. Now press tab to go to the edit mode, press A to select everything, and we'll scale it down like this. Also, to place it properly according to these cutouts, let's go to the top view by pressing 7 on the numpad, zoom in, and to place the gears at different positions, let's return back to the object mode, and with this gear selected, press Shift+D to create a duplicate, then right click to cancel the movement, and we'll place it over here. Then to scale it down, tab to go to the edit mode, and let's scale it down like this. And yes, right now, just like the rotation, the scaling is also being applied by taking the 3D cursor as the reference point. To fix this, go to the transform pivot point menu, and we'll change this back to the median point. Now let's scale it down like this, and left click to finalize. Moving ahead, let's return back to the object mode, press Shift+D to create another duplicate, and we'll place it over here. Now go to the edit mode, and we'll scale it down. Then once again, we'll go back to the object mode, press Shift+D to create a duplicate, and place it over here. Similarly, for this cutout, I'll create one more duplicate and place it over here. To scale it up, press tab to go to the edit mode, and we'll scale it up like this. Moving ahead, we now have to create 3 more duplicates for these circles. And if you remember, these cutouts were almost similar to the ones where we just placed the 3 gears. As a result, I will be selecting all these 3 gears by holding the shift button, and we'll create the duplicates by pressing Shift+D, and we'll place them over here. Now with the 3 of them selected, go to the edit mode, press A to select everything, and press R to rotate it. After this, left click to finalize. Let's also come out of the edit mode, and now we'll be adjusting the position of each of these gears individually according to the cutouts. Similarly, I'll select this one also and slightly move it like this. Now the next thing that we need to do is to model the hands of the pocket watch and the middle part where the 2 hands of the clock will intersect. So for that middle part, I will select this top part that we created, then go to the side view by pressing 3 on the numpad, press Shift+D to create a duplicate, right click to cancel the movement. Now to rotate it, press tab to enter the edit mode, press A to select everything, and we'll rotate it in the x-axis by 90 degrees. After this, we need to place this on the center region of this pocket watch. So for this, return back to the object mode, and now we'll be using a shortcut which will move this object back to the 3D cursor. And the shortcut to do this is to press Alt+G. By doing this, we basically reset the position of the selected object back to the place where the 3D cursor is placed. Now press tab to enter the edit mode, and we'll slightly scale it down like this. Also, let's scale it up further in the Z-axis in order to give it some height. Now to ensure that it is properly placed, we'll return back to the object mode, then go to the side view by pressing 3 on the numpad, and if you want, you can change its position by enabling the X-ray mode and comparing the distance between this circular plate and this object that we'll be using as the middle part. After this, we'll disable the X-ray mode, and let's now work on modeling the hands of the clock. So for this, press Shift+A, go to mesh, and I will select the plane object. Let's go to the top view, press tab to enter the edit mode, and we'll scale it down in the X-axis. Also, we'll turn on the X-ray mode in order to see everything properly. Now press S and and Y to scale it down in order to reduce the length of this hand. Now we'll be using this particular hand as the minute hand of the clock. So while being in the edit mode and with all the vertices selected, I'll move this up in the Y axis and place it over here. Also, let's slightly reduce its scaling in the X axis even more, and now it looks perfect. Then if you want to make the ends of the hand slightly pointing, then for this press Ctrl plus R to add a loop cut over here, then left click to finalize and right click to cancel the movement. Then I'll select this vertex and we'll move it up in the Y axis like this. And with this we have created the minute hand of our pocket watch. But if I disable the X-ray mode, then you will notice that the position or the placement of this minute hand is not accurate. As a result, while being in the object mode, I will press G and Z to move it up and we'll place it over here. Similarly, I'll go to the top view again, and to create the R hand, press Shift plus D to create a duplicate, right click to cancel the movement, press Tab to enter the edit mode, press A to select all, and we'll rotate it like this. However, you can see that it is rotating around the pivot point and not the 3D cursor. To fix this, go to the transform pivot point and select the 3D cursor. Now let's rotate it like this. Now to scale it down, press S and left click to finalize. And so with this, we have created both the hands of the pocket watch. But if I zoom in, then you will notice that the position of these hands is not accurate. So for this, I'll first select this middle part and will slightly move it up in the Z axis. Then I'll select this smaller hand and we'll move it up in the Z axis and place it over here. Also, we'll move these gears that we added for the pocket watch in the upward direction so that they properly align with the circular disc. So to select all of them, go to the scene collection, and in this collection number 2, we have all these gears added, and to select all of them, I'll first select this object with the name gear, then scroll down, and with the shift key holded, I'll select this last object with the name gear.007. This will select all the objects who have their names present between the first and the last object. Now to align them properly, let's go to the side view by pressing 3 on the numpad. Also enable the X-ray mode by pressing Alt plus Z, and we'll move them up in the Z axis and place them over here. And so with this, we have the complete model of this pocket watch ready for rendering. Just a single thing that we'll be adding is a circular object which will be used as the glass to cover the pocket watch. So go to the top view, press Shift plus A, go to mesh and select the circle, press Tab to enter the edit mode. Let's also turn on the X-ray mode and we'll scale this circle down like this, and to fill the face, press F. Now to place it properly, let's go to the side view by pressing 3 on the numpad. Let's zoom in. Let's also return back to the object mode and let's move the circle up in the Z axis. So press G, Z and move it up like this. Let's also disable the X-ray mode. Let's move it slightly more upwards until it has covered all the parts of the pocket watch. And once everything is ready, we'll now work on giving some materials to the different parts of our pocket watch. But before that, I'll select these top parts and right click, apply shade auto smooth. Similarly for this one also, right click and apply shade auto smooth. Now to begin working on the materials, we'll be switching to the rendered view, and by default, the EV render engine is turned on in the scene. But to get realistic results, we'll be switching the render engine from EV to cycles. So to do this, click on this icon which is for the render properties, and in the render engine, we'll change this from EV to cycles. Then for a basic lighting, I will select this default light which is placed over here, press Shift plus D to create a duplicate, and we'll move it in the X axis. Now I'll select the circle that we added as the cover of the pocket watch, and to create the glass material, we need to open the material properties which can be accessed by clicking on this icon. Now to create a new material, click on the new button, and over here you will find several options in order to change the way how the material will look. For example, in the base color, you can use this color wheel to define the color of the selected object, but for now we'll be going with the white color. Then in the roughness, I'll reduce this value to 0, and to make it transparent, go to the transmission, and in the weight we'll enter a value of 1. And after this, you will notice that the circle that we created is now transparent like glass. Moving ahead, we'll now select the body of the pocket watch, and for this object we'll be creating a material which looks similar to the gold metal. And in order to create such complicated materials, it is recommended to open the shader editor window. So for this, we'll expand the area of the timeline editor and we'll change this to the shader editor. To do this, click on this icon, and from here select the shader editor. Now to create a new material, click on this new button. Let's zoom in, and the first thing that we'll change here is the metallic strength. By default, it is set to 0, but since we are making a material which looks similar to the gold metal, we'll change this metallic strength to a much higher value like 0.8 or 0.9, and this will give it a reflecting surface just like a metal. Moving ahead, let's now work on creating the color for the gold metal. So for this purpose, one option is to go to the base color and choose the yellow color from here, but a better option is to use a node which is named as the color ramp node. It will allow us to use a combination of different colors for this particular material. So for this, press Shift plus A with the cursor in the shader editor, then go to converter and select the color ramp. Let's place it over here, and now we have to connect this color ramp to the principal BSDF. So I'll take this color socket by left clicking and we'll drag it into the base color of the principal BSDF. Now to choose the colors, we are having these two pointers in which one of them is black colored and the other one is white colored. In fact, if I select any of the pointers and left click and drag it like this, then you will notice that the pointers will begin to move and the effect of their position will be seen on the color of the material. Now to give it a gold-like color, I'll select this pointer which is black in color, and to change the color of this pointer, click here, and in the color wheel, first we need to increase the brightness from here in order to view the colors. So first of all, I will select the yellow color for the first pointer, and then I'll select the second pointer and will change its color from white to the black color by reducing the brightness in order to give it a contrasting look. If you want, you can try to change the position of the different pointers in order to get different results. Also, right now, we are not having any kind of texture applied on this object, which basically means that we have a simple material which has a yellowish color and some metallic strength, but to add some texture to it, go to the shader editor, press Shift plus A, then go to texture, and this will display a list of all the textures that are available in Blender. But the most common one is the noise texture, which I have selected, and we'll place it over here. Now to see the effect of this texture on this material, we first need to connect it to the color ramp. So take the color socket in the noise texture and connect it to the factor socket in the color ramp. And after doing this, you will notice a slight texture appearing on this gold material. In fact, if you want to change the way how this texture looks, then go to the scaling value, and if I increase it, then you will notice that the scaling of this texture will begin to increase. But for now, I'll keep this value to 5 or 6. Let's also increase the roughness from here, and now the texture looks perfect. In fact, I also think that we should give a greeny texture to this gold material. So go to the scale value in the noise texture, and I'll increase it to a very high number like 100, and with this, we are now having this slight greeny texture applied on the gold material. Moving ahead, we'll now be selecting the circular plate that we created with the cutouts. So I'll go to the scene collection, and from here, select the circle, and now we'll be creating a material which looks similar to the wood material. So click on the new button, and to create a wood-like texture, we'll be adding the noise texture. So press Shift plus A, go to texture, and select noise texture. We'll place it over here. Then for the colors, let's add the color ramp node. So press Shift plus A, go to converter, and select the color ramp. We'll place it over here. Now I'll take the color socket in the noise texture, and we'll connect it to the factor in the color ramp. Then for the output, I'll take the color socket in the color ramp, and we'll connect it to the base color in the principal BSTF. Now to create the wood texture, we need to change the scaling of the noise texture, but this time we have to do it separately in the X, Y, and the Z axis. And to do this thing, we'll be adding a vector mapping node. So press Shift plus A, then go to vector and select the mapping node. We'll place it over here, and to connect it to the noise texture, take the vector socket in the mapping node and connect it to the vector in the noise texture. Now to create a texture which resembles the wood, I'll go to the scaling values in the vector mapping node, and will increase it in the X axis to a very high number like 100. Then in the scale value of the noise texture, I'll input a value of somewhere around 10 or 12. Then in the color ramp, I will select this first pointer, we'll move it over here, and to change its color, click here, slightly increase the brightness, and in the color wheel, we'll be selecting the brown color. Similarly, I'll select the second pointer, let's move it slightly over here, and we'll change its color by reducing the brightness, and for this one, we'll be selecting a mix of yellow and brown color. And finally, this is how the texture that we created, resembling the wood, is now looking on the circular plate. Now moving ahead, we'll be using the same wood material for the top part of the pocket watch. So I'll select this object, and to apply the same material, go to the material properties, click on this icon, and from here, we can select any material that we have previously used in this file. So I'll be selecting the material.002, which is the wood material, and it will get applied to the selected object. Similarly, I will select these side objects and will assign the same material.002. Now moving ahead, we'll be working on creating the material for these gear objects. So I'll select any one of them, then go to the material properties, click on the new button, and will increase the metallic strength to a value of 1. Then in the base color, I'll reduce the brightness in order to give it a grey or a silver look. Now to use the same material for all the remaining gears, one option is to select each one individually and then apply the material from here. But a better option is to first select all those gears except the one on which the material is applied. And to do this, I'll go to the scene collection, and you can see that the selected object on which the material is applied is named as gear. So to select the remaining gears, I'll first select this gear.001, then with the shift key holded, select the last object, which is the gear.007. And now I'll return back to the 3D viewport, and after selecting all the remaining gears, I'll hold the shift button and we'll select the gear on which we have applied the material. So to do this thing, I'll go to the object mode, and first we need to hide the circle that we added for the glass material. So for this, go to the scene collection, and we'll be hiding this circle.001. Now with the shift key holded, I'll select this gear, and to apply the same material as the last selected one to the remaining gears, the shortcut is to press Ctrl plus L, and this link menu will appear where we'll be selecting the link materials. Now to view the result, we'll again go to the render view, and now you can see that the material that we created for this gear is now applied to the remaining gears also. And the reason why everything is appearing a lot more clear as compared to before is that we have hidden the circle.001, which was the glass object. But for now, let's unhide this by again clicking on this I button. And now the next thing that we'll be doing is to create a glowing material for the text that we added. So for this, let's scroll down in the scene collection, and I will select this first text. Now to create the glowing material, I'll go to the material properties, properties, click on the new button, let's scroll down, and in the emission, I'll enter the strength of somewhere close to 2, and in the emission color, I'll change this to the light blue color. Now to see the effect of emission in a much better way, we'll be disabling the lights in the scene. So click on this icon, and from here, disable the scene lights, and now you can see the emission or the glowing effect applied to this text object. Also, if you want to change the color of the emission, then you can change it from here and assign any particular color of your choice. But for now, I'll be going with the light blue color. Similarly, I'll select this text.001, and to apply the same material, click on this icon and select the material.004. Similarly, for the text.002, I'll click on this icon, and from here, select the material.004. Then at last, I will select this text.003, then click here in the material properties and select the material.004. Also, if you want, you can go to the emission strength and increase the value from here if you want to add some more glow or emission to this material. Moving ahead, let's again enable the scene lights from here, and now we'll be giving some material to the hands of the clock and this middle part. So for this, let's go to the solid mode. Now I'll select this circle, press H to hide it, and now we'll be selecting this middle object where the hands of the clock are intersecting. Now with this selected, I'll go to the material properties, click on this icon and select the wood material, which is the material.002. Then for the hands, I'll select the minute hand, create a new material, and in this one, I'll again go to the emission, increase the strength to a value of 2, and in the color, I will assign the red color. To see its effect, let's go to the rendered view. Let's also apply the same material to the R hand also. So with this selected, click on this icon and select the material.005. To turn off the scene lights, click here and disable the scene lights. And finally, this is how this pocket watch is looking. Let's also unhide the glass that we added. So press Alt plus H to unhide it. Now let's come to the final part of this chapter, which is to finalize this scene and render an image and also create an animation with this pocket watch. So for this, let's first enable the lights of the scene by clicking here and turning on the scene lights. Now let's zoom out, and in order to see how this pocket watch will look in the final render, we need to go to the camera view. So for this, press 0 on the numpad to switch to the camera view, and from this camera angle, we can see that we have to change the rotation of the pocket watch to properly render it. So for this purpose, let's go to the solid mode. Also, turn on the X-ray mode by pressing Alt plus Z, and we'll be selecting all the parts of the pocket watch. After this, we'll rotate it in the X-axis by 90 degrees. So press R, X and type 90 and press enter to confirm. Now let's again go to the camera view by pressing 0 on the numpad, and now to adjust the camera properly according to the position of this pocket watch, you need to click on this lock button. This will enable the lock camera to view, and now if I use the middle mouse button by holding it and moving around, then now I can change the camera view easily in the scene. Let's also zoom in slightly. Now let's also turn off the lock camera to view by clicking on this lock button, and now the next thing that we'll do is to create a simple background and the base for this pocket watch. So for this, let's add a plane object in the scene. So press Shift plus A, go to mesh and select the plane, press tab to enter the edit mode, and with all the vertices selected, we'll rotate it in the X-axis by 90 degrees. Also, let's scale it up around 5 to 10 times. Now come out of the edit mode and press G to move it in the Y-axis. So let's place it over here. Then for the base, let's go to the front view by pressing 1 on the numpad and move the plane up in the Z-axis till the base of the plane is close to the base of the pocket watch. After this, we'll turn off the X-ray mode, and with the plane selected, press tab to go to the edit mode, and now we need to extrude this particular edge in order to create the base. So press 2 for the edge select mode, then deselect everything, and we'll now be selecting only this bottom edge. To extrude it, press E and Y, and this will create a new face emerging from that edge, which will be used as the base. Now let's click to finalize, and let's also go to the camera view to see how the scene looks. Now one more thing that we can improve here is this particular edge, which is connecting the background and the bottom face. So right now it is very flat, but in order to make it smooth or basically give it a curved appearance, we'll be using the bevel tool. So press Ctrl plus B, then I'll move my cursor away, and to increase the number of segments, I will use the scroll wheel. So let's keep the number of segments to somewhere around 10 or 12, then left click to finalize, and with this we are now having a curved angle between the background and the base instead of a sharp angle. Also, right click and apply Shade Auto Smooth to make this area smoother. Now let's also work on adjusting the lighting in our scene. So for this, we'll switch to the rendered view, then I'll select both of these lights by holding the shift button, and we'll move them forward in the Y-axis. So let's place them over here. To view everything properly, let's go to the front view by pressing 1 on the numpad, and we'll move these lights down in the Z-axis. Also, to bring them closer, I'll first select this light and move it in the X-axis and place it over here. Similarly, I'll select this light. Let's also move it closer to the pocket watch and left click to finalize the position. Now I'll select both of them again, and we'll move them down in the Z-axis, and we'll fix their position over here. Also, to reduce the power of the lights, I'll select one of them, then go to the object object data properties, and in the power value, we'll reduce this to 400 watts. Similarly, I'll select this light also and reduce the power to 400 watts. Now to see how everything looks from the camera view, press 0 on the numpad, and so this is how our scene is looking. Moving ahead, let's also give some material to the background and the base. So I'll select this plain object, then go to the material properties, create a new material, and in the base color, I will choose the gray color. So let's reduce the brightness from here in order to get the gray color for the background and the base. Now our scene is almost looking perfect, but one more thing that we can improve here is to add some colored lights in these cutout regions where we have the gears added. And to do this thing, let's first go to the solid mode, then I'll select the circular plate, press H to hide it, and now to create the lights, press Shift plus A, then go to the light and select the point light. To get a better perspective, let's go to the front view by pressing 1 on the numpad, let's zoom in, and with the light selected, we'll be moving it in these cutout regions. So press G to move it, and we'll be placing the first one over here. And to see how it looks, let's switch to the rendered view, and so this is how the lighting effect is looking. One more thing that we can change here is the power value, so we'll reduce it from 10 watts to 7 watts, and to give it some color, I'll go to this color option and change the color to red for this light. Now to create more lights for the remaining cutout regions, I'll go back to the solid mode, and with this light selected, let's first go to the side view by pressing 3 on the numpad in order to fix its position. So press Alt plus Z, and we'll slightly move it forward in the y-axis and place it over here. Now for the remaining lights, let's go to the front view again, press Alt plus Z to turn off the X-ray mode, and with this light selected, press Shift plus D, and I'll place this over here in the second cutout. Similarly, let's create one more duplicate, place it over here, press Shift plus D again, and we'll place the next cutout in this region. Now to see how the rendered version will look, let's go to the rendered view, and we are now able to see this red colored glow in these cutout regions. So for these three lights, we'll be having the red color. Then for the middle light, I'll change its color to the green color. Similarly, to create the remaining lights, let's go back to the solid mode, and with this light selected, press Shift plus D to create a duplicate, and we'll place it over here. And for this one also, the color of the light will be set as the green color. Now let's create one more duplicate, so press Shift plus D and place the light over here, and in the color, I'll change this to the blue color. Now we'll place the same duplicates at the remaining two cutouts also, so press Shift plus D, place it over here, and create one last duplicate, and we'll place it in this cutout region. Now go to the rendered view, and finally this is how this pocket watch is looking from the camera view. Also, in these three bottom gears, the effect of light is a bit low. So to solve this problem, with this light selected, I'll go to the power option and we'll increase the power to 40 watts. Similarly, we'll select the other lights also. So with this one selected, go to the power value and let's increase it to 40 watts. Just like this, I'll select this light over here and we'll increase its value to 40 watts. Now once it is done, we'll be ready to finally render an image of this pocket watch. So to render the image, simply click on this render option and select render image. After that, this window will appear where the image of the pocket watch will begin to render. And over here you can see the number of samples of this rendered image. Higher the number of samples, more will be the time it takes to render the final image. But with that, the quality of the image will also get better. And yes, you can also reduce this value manually in Blender. So let's do this thing. And also, you can see in this image which is getting rendered that the power of blue light is slightly higher. So I'll close this window, then go to the solid mode, and with the light selected in the lower cutout region, I'll reduce the value of power from 40 watts to something like 15 or 20 watts. Let's do the same with the other lights also. So we'll reduce their power to a value of 15 watts. After this, let's also reduce the number of samples for rendering the image. And to do this, we have to open this render properties by clicking on this icon, and then in the sampling category, we'll be having two options. First is the viewport and the second is the render. So the viewport is basically this region where you create and edit different kinds of objects. And if I go to the render view, then you will see that in this mode also, we have the number of samples which are being rendered. But to save the time and memory, you can reduce the number of maximum samples from 1024 to a value of 128. Similarly, in the render category also, we'll reduce the number of maximum samples from 4096 to 128. And this is because in most of the cases, the sample value equal to 128 works the best for the cycles renders. Finally, to again render the image, go to the render option and select render image. And now this window will again appear where this image of the pocket watch is being rendered. And you can also check the maximum number of samples, which is now set to 128. So it will take some time to complete the render depending upon the configuration of your PC. And once the rendering is done, you can save this image by going to the image menu and click on the save image from here. But for now, I'll close this window, and now we'll be creating a simple animation with the hands of the pocket watch. So for this, I'll first select this minute hand, and to animate it, we need to change this window of the shader editor into the timeline editor. To do this, click on this icon, and from here, select the timeline editor. Now in this timeline editor, we have these numbers which are basically the frames of an animation. And for those of you who don't know, 1 second of animation can consist of any number of frames, but in general, we normally see the animations of 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second. So in this particular case, we'll be creating an animation of 24 frames frames per second, and to do this thing, first with this minute hand selected, we need to insert a keyframe at the frame number 1. And to insert the keyframe, the shortcut is to press I, and now you will notice that a keyframe is inserted for the selected object at the frame number 1. This will basically store the position, rotation, and the scale value of the minute hand at frame number 1. Now I'll take this pointer to the frame number 60, and suppose I want that the minute hand should complete one rotation in these 60 frames. So to do this, press R, Y, and in the numpad type 360, then press enter to confirm, and also press I to insert a keyframe. Now if I take the pointer back to the frame number 1 and press the spacebar to play the animation, then you will see that we have a simple animation created with the minute hand making a complete rotation. Similarly, I'll now take this pointer to the frame number 120 and will again rotate it in the y-axis by 360 degrees. Press I to insert another keyframe, and now we have this complete animation of the minute hand completing 2 rotations in this pocket watch. Just like this, let's also animate this R hand. So I'll take the pointer back to the frame number 1, then press I to insert a keyframe, then I'll take the pointer to the frame number 60 and we rotate this in the y-axis by 30 degrees. Now press I to insert a keyframe. Now let's again take the pointer back to the frame number 1 and press the spacebar to play the animation. And by doing this, both the minute hand and the R hand were rotating in the animation. Now moving ahead, I'll take the pointer to the frame number 120, and with this R hand selected, let's rotate it in the y-axis by 30 degrees again. Press I to insert a keyframe, and with this, we have a simple animation created with both the hands of the pocket watch rotating like this. Now suppose you want to convert this animation that we created into a video file. So to do this thing, we need to open the output properties, and in this we have various options like the resolution, the frame range, and in the frame range option, I'll change the ending value to 120, and that is because the total length of an animation is of 120 frames. Then scroll down, and in the output options, the file format is selected as a PNG, and if you want to create an animation video, then you have to select this file format, which is FFmpeg video. Also, to save your file at a particular location, click on this folder icon and then choose your desired location from here. After this, to finally render the animation, simply go to the render options and click on the render animation. Then this window will appear where the animation will get rendered frame by frame, and right now it is rendering the frame number 1, and once all the frames are completely rendered, which might take a lot of time, you can view the animation by opening that location which you saved in the output path. And yes, you can also view this animation that I have created with this pocket watch. And yes, don't forget to share your rendered images of the pocket watch and the animation videos on the Discord server, whose link is available in the description of this video. And so with this, we have now completed the chapter number 1 of the Blender modeling course. Also, if you wish to download the 3D model of this particular pocket watch, then you can join the Patreon of this channel by using the link provided in the description. So in today's chapter, we learned about a variety of modeling tools, some important modifiers, then we also learned to create these text objects, then we assigned some materials to the different parts of the pocket watch, and then in the end, we also added this cool lighting effect in the cutout regions. Then we even created a simple animation with the hands of the clock rotating at different speeds. And so the next chapter of this series will be the chapter number 2, where we'll be modeling a guitar in Blender, and while doing that, we'll also be learning about some new modeling tools and techniques which you must use while doing 3D modeling in Blender. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel, press that notification bell so that you can get timely updates about the upcoming chapters. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.